Welcome back to another episode of the Shoecast Show. If this is your first time listening, thank you for tuning in. This is a podcast where we interview and talk everything related to shoes. My name is Chase, and I'm here with my co-host today, Landon. And today we are talking to Weston. Weston is the owner of Rose Anvil. Rose Anvil specializes in handmade leather pieces. You can find him on YouTube, where he creates videos of the daily operation of Rose Anvil and also reviewing boots and shoes by actually cutting them in half. How's it going, Weston?
Pretty good. It's good to be on your guys' podcast.
Thank you.
Man. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So before we start, we just want to say congrats on basically hitting 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's impressive for sure.
Oh yeah, did I pass 200,000? I've been camping, so
You're like right there. I know it's right there.
I think you're at like 199. Yeah. I'm sure you'll hit it probably by the time we're done with this podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So where did the name Rose Anvil come from?
It's kind of funny. I started this business when I was in college. It was just a little side gig. I bought a wallet and a belt from like Nordstrom or JCPenney or something like that, and it fell apart immediately. And I was like, I can literally make a wallet and a belt better than this, because both of my grandpas were leather workers. So I was like, I know kind of how to do it. I got access to the tools. I can have someone kind of help me. So I went to Tandy Leather, bought a piece of leather, made a belt, made a wallet. They looked horrible, but they were significantly better than anything that one belt and wallet I bought from like JCPenney. And then I was like, okay, well, I used up 1 square foot of leather and I literally have 20 square feet left. So I was like, well, I'll make some more. I'll make some for my friends, whatever, sell some maybe. And friends started liking them. Other friends started wanting more. And I ended up using the whole hide, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll make like a little brand just to like put my name on them. And so I was trying to think like, what's a cool name I can use that's not like Weston K Leather Goods.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I want to take inspiration from the grandpa that really taught me leatherworking, and my grandma, which was his wife, obviously, because she was an artist and she was really good at oil painting. She won a bunch of awards. And so and both of those grandparents had a big inspiration and influence on my life growing up, because I was raised in a pretty small town in central Utah called Mona. And I was like raised working with my grandpa, and he was a Korean vet, and he was kind of a hard old timey cowboy who just didn't show a whole lot of affection, but taught me how to work hard, always took me out on the farm, and kind of showed me the hardworking aspect of life and taught me those lessons. And then my grandma she taught me more like the artistic side of things. She kind of taught me how to paint. She was always having these like really funny in-depth discussions with me, which I thought were so deep at the time. But as like an 8-year-old, I was like, oh, I'm having these intense conversations with my grandma. These are so cool. And so so both of those had like inspiration, or had a big influence on my life growing up. On one end, it was the hardworking. The other end was the artistic. So I wanted to have a name that kind of represented both sides of that. So I chose a word from my grandma, Rose, because she had a huge, literally like half-acre rose garden.
Wow.
And my grandpa was a farmer, worked with blacksmithing tools and a lot of hard tools like that. And so I was like, I'll just use an anvil. And so I combined the two words, and Rose Anvil was kind of how it came up. And I never planned on it being something. And so that's the business name. And I get emails and DMs and comments every single day being like, hello, Miss Rose, we have a special offer for you. And I'm like, no, my name's Weston and I'm a dude.
That's so funny.
So that's kind
awesome.
of the genesis of it.
Wow,
that's a cool story.
yeah,
Very cool story.
So, were you always interested in leatherwork, or how did you get your passion for doing or like working with leather?
Well, I was around it quite a bit all growing up, because my dad was kind of a hobbyist leather worker and made stuff on the side here and there. And both of my grandpas were. The one grandpa was way more into it than the other. He actually was a saddle maker for quite a few years. But I've always been attracted to certain things that have longevity. Like I've always just liked materials and products that get better with age and last a long time. So leather's probably the best example of material in that way, that it literally just gets better with age and it's long lasting. And so I've always kind of liked leather products, and I never could afford it, and so I ended up making them, and that's kind of how I started getting to leather work and why I liked it so much growing up.
That's awesome. So you mentioned for a little bit that you kind of grew up in Utah. Where would you say Rose Anvil is located now, or just kind of know where are you located at right now?
So we were in Logan, Utah, which is at the very top of the state. Okay. And then we just moved the shop down to Salt Lake 2 or 3 weeks ago. And Salt Lake's basically right in the center of the state. It's kind of the hub of the state. It's the biggest city in the state. And so now we're down there. It's a lot closer to all my friends and family, because I went to college in Logan, and it's a kind of a more rural area, and so it's really affordable to live there and easy to start a business there because it's so cheap. But we grew to a point where a lot of our business associates were down there, and shipping was faster down there, it's cheaper down there, and I wanted to get down there because it's closer to all my friends and family. And so we're in Salt Lake now, which is really nice to be down there.
No, and that place is beautiful. I actually, one of my best friends from high school went to college at BYU, so I went and visited him there in Provo last year, and we went up to Salt Lake is where I flew into whenever I went to go see him, and oh my gosh, it's an excellent city. I love it.
Yeah, I'd like to go there.
Yeah, Salt Lake's cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so I actually when I was writing these questions, I noticed that you did move into a new studio. How has it been there? How's it been moving in? I know that there's no AC in the back, which it doesn't seem like you're a fan of, but other than that.
Yeah, it's been kind of weird because we had a really nice shop it was technically Smithfield, but up in Logan, and it had lots of natural light, and it was really affordable. It was only I think it was only $1,200 a month for 2,000 square feet. And they told us that they were going to try to sell it. And then one day the guy that owns the building, which is he's a good friend of mine, so I'm not talking trash on him in any way, but he's like, okay, we sold the building. You guys got to be out in 12 days. And I was like, okay, looks like we're moving to Salt Lake. So this was looking everywhere to find a shop, and we finally found one that was within our budget, and we're just like, okay, let's sign the contract, let's get down there. So we packed up everything we had. It literally took up an entire 52-foot semi that my dad brought up and a 26-foot U-Haul. We made the move, and then because I was solely focused on getting the shop down there and getting a shop and getting everything set up, because we had to shut down the business for a week and a half just to make the move, that I didn't even have time to look for an apartment. So I've literally just been living out of my office.
That's funny.
And it's so miserable, but I do have an apartment, and I'm finally moving in.
Oh, that's good.
I think tomorrow. So
awesome.
it was a disaster of a move, but it's almost like that's the type of thing that has to happen to force your hand to make a big move like that.
For sure, definitely. So what are some of the pieces that you guys offer? Talk about that a little bit.
So I started out like kind of what we sell. Yeah. So the majority of what we sell is camera harnesses, and that's our best selling product. It's our most successful product. I started, and I guess a lot of people have no idea what a camera harness is, but it's so a lot of wedding photographers and nature photographers and sport photographers want to use multiple lenses, but they don't want to be switching them back and forth because you can get dust in the inside of the camera, and it takes a long time, and you can drop things. So a lot of photographers carry 2 cameras to just quickly change between cameras which have different lenses, and so they put them on a harness. And there's quite a few harnesses out there, but none of them work really well. And one of my friends is a really successful photographer. Her name's India Earl. She came to me and she's like, hey, you're a leather worker, make me a better harness. And me being from a rural area in central Utah, I was like, oh, all these harnesses suck. Let's just make one that looks and acts like a gun harness, like a gun holster harness. And so we designed one and tested it for about a year and kind of tweaked the design, launched it on Kickstarter, and we raised $250,000 between Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Wow. And so that's kind of what really launched the business, and that's our best selling product. and we sell, that's our highest selling product and our best revenue generating products. But we also sell belts and wallets, wedding rings. As the business grew, I don't like, I do this business because I love working with my hands and I love creating things. And so it's just kind of become this conglomeration of random things that I love to make.
Right.
And so wedding rings is another thing I make, and then the YouTube videos, and yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Man, imagine if your friend never came to you to ask for that harness, man. Can you imagine?
I know,
man.
it's
and
weird how it all works out.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
even with the YouTube, I never planned on being the guy who cuts shoes and boots in half on YouTube. It just kind of happened, everything with this business has just been working out great, and it all just kind of falls into my lap. Everyone's like, you're such a successful business person. And I'm like, yeah, not really. I just get super lucky super often.
There you go.
So what is your typical day at Rose Anvil?
Oh, it's just chaos. It's just wild, because a lot of people see the YouTube channel and the products and the Kickstarters, and they think we're this big successful business, but it's literally me and 3 of my friends running this business.
Wow.
And so my typical day is I come in, I answer emails, put out any fires that are happening with customer service or production, if a machine's down or whatever. And then most of my time is spent on YouTube. So I spend a lot of time planning the videos, recording the videos, editing. I do have an editor, but he's still up in Logan, so it's kind of been a hard transition.
Right.
And then a lot of my time is on the product side is spent on product design and development. So I design all the new products, tweak the current products, and kind of one of my favorite things is like continuing to improve the current products we have, which drives everyone nuts. It drives people who buy the products nuts. It drives my employees nuts. It drives people who look at my business nuts, because they're like, you literally change your products every 3 weeks. But to me, I'm like, I want to make the best products humanly possible.
Right.
and
it's fun for me. And so, yeah, that's kind of my average day. It's just chaos.
Just chaos.
All right, that's awesome, man. So why did you start? So what made you want to start filming YouTube videos? Where did that idea kind of come from?
So it actually started a few years ago. My little brother was going to school, and one of his class, I can't even remember what it was. It was something with one of his classes. He wanted to help start a YouTube channel for me. So we filmed like over the course of his semester, I think like 8 videos. We posted them on YouTube, and we got a fair amount of success. Nothing crazy, no million view videos, but we had some in the tens of thousands and some in the thousands, and it was really fun. And they were more centered around leatherworking. And then he finished his semester, and I couldn't convince him to make any more videos. So I just kind of did a few videos here and there, because I knew it had a lot of potential. But at the same time, we were doing the camera harnesses, and they were blowing up on Kickstarter, and other sides of the business were growing faster and better. And so YouTube just kind of got put on the back burner until my friend Zach Nelson, he's a YouTuber. He runs a channel, Jerry Rig Everything. He basically, I think he's got like 6 million subscribers. He tests phones and does durability tests.
I love his channel. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Small world.
He's a really good buddy of mine. We went to college together, and he was getting married. And so he's like, hey man, I know you make wedding rings. Will you make my wedding ring? And I was like, for sure. Like, let's do it. And we planned it out. And he's like, I think a couple days before, he's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to come film it for my YouTube channel. And I was like, oh, sick. Like 6 million subscribers. Like, I'm down. And so he comes up, we filmed the video, and he's like, what social media you want me to add to the description? I was like, oh, add my Instagram, add my website, and like you could add my YouTube. There's not a whole lot on it. He's like, you have a YouTube? And I was like, yeah, dude, I got a YouTube. Like, plug that too. He's like, I didn't know you had a YouTube. You should be putting out content every single week. He's like, hurry and make like 3 videos that go along with this kind of video. Film you making some rings, because this video is going to come out in 2 weeks. So hurry and make some content so people that come to your channel will start watching your stuff. I was like, all right, I guess we're going in on YouTube. And so I made a few videos. His video launches, it gets millions of views. I think I went from like 2,000 subscribers to 4,000 subscribers overnight. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do a little bit more on YouTube. Maybe I should do a little bit more on YouTube. And I was talking to Zach afterwards. I was like, hey man, that one video like doubled my subscribers. And he's like, we should talk about your YouTube channel. So me and him had a quick discussion. He's like, my success came in doing something that no one else is willing to do with products that people love. He's like, I rip them apart, I tear them apart, I durability test them, and people love watching it. He's like, you should do that with your world of products. And I was like, yeah, like no one wants to see a wallet be torn apart. And I was like, what if I do shoes or boots? And I was like, I'll just try it. You know, like I'll try like a Doc Martin, you know, one of the more popular brands. I've been wanting a pair of Docs for a while. And this was last September. So I cut a pair of Doc Martens in half, and it just goes crazy. Like people are just, the video went from, I'm thinking like, I think it got like 20 views the first day. The second day I got 2,000 views. The next day I got 10,000 views, and it just skyrocketed. So I was like, okay, well, clearly I hit a nerve on YouTube where people are interested to see what's inside their favorite like leather products in the footwear world. And so I was like, okay, let's do a few more of these videos. And then I tried a few other videos, like leatherworking videos. They weren't working. So I'm like, hey, I'm just going to do what people on YouTube want me to do. And that's cutting boots and shoes in half. And I kept cutting more and more, focusing more on boots because that's kind of more of the world I'm involved in. Right. And I went from 4,000 subscribers last September and now all the way up to 200,000 subscribers almost a year later.
1 year. Oh my god.
That's growth right there. That's exponential growth right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's been weird. It's been crazy.
That is awesome.
That's amazing. So I mean, I guess this is an obvious question, but what is the toughest shoe that you've had to cut in half?
There's a company called Nick's Handmade Boots from Spokane, Washington. Yep. And they're the most hand-built, handcrafted company in basically the United States. They do everything by hand. They make everything by hand. They use all the highest quality products or raw materials to make their boots. And I did one video. I think it's actually my most popular video.
I was just watching it right before I came on here. Yeah, I was just watching it.
Yeah, I think it's got over 1 million views now. And they use nails in their boots, and I tore it all apart. And after I filmed the video, I was like, man, I literally have a pile of nails that I pulled out of this boot. Jeez. And I counted them up, and I was like, there's over 80 nails in this boot. And so when I was doing the video, I was like, I counted them up, and there's 80 nails, and I was like, these boots are insane. And that's one of the hardest boots I've ever tore apart. And I actually have a video coming up with them soon. That's they specialize in work boots, and they have a bunch of different options for like upgrades, like a steel toe. You can add like a steel shank. You can add extra layers of protection, and they're sending me a boot with all of their most beefy safety options to cut apart to kind of see like what the most indestructible boot looks like and what's inside of it. And so that's a video coming up, and that will be the hardest boot that I've ever torn apart.
There you go. That'll be the answer to the question right there. That's cool. So you touched on this a little bit, but in the beginning, and I guess you're kind of going through some of the struggles still, but what were some of the struggles, starting off Rose Anvil whenever you were getting everything going?
It's one of the biggest things is trying to separate yourself from the rest of the world, because it's really, because I went to business school at Utah State University, and they kind of just teach you the basics of business. They don't really teach you how to start a business and how to grow a business. And one of the things I think everyone struggles with who starts a business, or or a YouTube channel or podcast, is like everyone wants to do what everyone else is already doing, and they think they're being unique, but it's really hard to actually be unique. And that's what I struggled with. Starting as I was making the same wallets everyone else was making. I was making the same belts as everyone was making. And honestly, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, a lot of my success in the business has come from outside influence, whether it was my friend who was a popular photographer, or Zach with J-Rig Everything, who kind of came in and was like, hey, I'm in this different section of YouTube, or I'm in this different world of photography. Do what I do, but in your world, or
Right.
do something for my world based on your world. And it took kind of I think it's called cross-boundary disruption is the business term for it. You basically are like taking things from a different type of business and applying it to yours, or taking your business and applying it to a different one. And that's really where I've seen all the best success. And that's the hardest thing I think for a small business to do, is find something that's unique, or come into a new area that no one else is in, and making a big difference in that area or that business.
That's
Wow,
awesome. That's
awesome.
very cool.
So you mentioned in one of your videos that you said that leatherworking is a dying art. Could you kind of go more in depth on that? Why do you think that?
Well, like I don't know, where were you guys raised? Where are you guys from?
We're both located in Florida,
But I actually grew up in Missouri, so
Yeah.
that's where I spent most of
Okay.
my life. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys were like involved with like the Boy Scouts very much, but like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, leatherworking was like a big part of like the Boy Scouts. And like when we go on like family vacations, like our grandpa would always bring leatherworking kits for us to make little bracelets out of. You'd buy them from like Tandy Leather or something. And now 20 years later, all my nieces and nephews, they're not even remotely involved in that world. Boy Scouts is basically shut down.
Right.
No one's doing leather craft with their kids anymore. It used to be like a big part of like the arts and crafts world, but it's kind of died out because of,
Technology.
I'm assuming, like the movement away from animal products.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Which, it is what it is. It's not the worst thing to move away from animal products, but it's just kind of a casualty. Leatherworking has just been kind of a casualty to that. And it's also another thing where 50 years ago, not nearly as many things were made overseas as cheaply, and fast fashion wasn't really a thing. People wanted to buy something that would last them a lifetime. Nowadays, people want to buy something that at least lasts them a season, then they put it in the closet, never touch it again, and eventually it ends up going to Goodwill.
Right.
And the trades are just another part of a dying art. Welders, nobody goes to welding school anymore, or trade school. And anything that you work with your hands in this technology age is just kind of going away. And so there's all these factors that kind of lead to these arts kind of dying out, because no one's interested in them. There's no money in them. There's no interest in them. And leatherworking is one of those unfortunate casualties in that. And so that's why I love leatherworking so much. And I'm always so happy to share it with people, and enthusiastic when anyone shows any interest in it, because it was a big part of my life growing up, and it's almost extinct 20 years later.
Now, for a follow-up question, because of COVID, a lot of people have been staying at home and have been kind of just getting other hobbies. I was just wondering, do you think people have been taking up, leatherwork? Have you seen a change, or at least a growth or an interest in leatherwork since this whole COVID thing started?
Yeah, I think, I just based on the comment sections in my videos and the DMs I get, people all the time, just from hearing someone talk from a fairly knowledgeable standpoint about leather, and doing the few little side projects I do on my channel, it kind of reignites that spark of interest in leatherworking and working with your hands. And so people reach out all the time, like, hey, I love your videos, or I like your wallets and stuff. It got me really interested in doing leather work. So I went down to the local Tandy and bought a piece of leather and started working with it. So I think with coronavirus, like you said, it's people are stuck inside. They want to work with their hands. They need a creative outlet. And so people have kind of been picking it up again, which is really cool to see.
That's awesome. So, you kind of mentioned that, you wanted to start classes on Rose Anvil. Is there any update, or how's that going?
That's a tough one, because, with the coronavirus stuff going on, not a lot of people are wanting to get out of the house and go to some guy's shop and take leather classes. But on the other hand, like we mentioned, people are dying to get out of the house and work with their hands. So it's kind of tricky. I've been a little hesitant to pull the trigger on the classes right now, just because, well, I'm still currently living in my shop, first of all, but and it's just a kind of a crazy time. But it's definitely something we're working on. That's the thing with like a small business. There's literally a never-ending list of things to
Oh,
do.
yeah.
But I'm hoping before Christmas, we'll have some classes up so that people can come and make their significant other a wallet or a belt or a bag or
Keychain,
something for
yeah.
around Christmas time.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, because me and my girlfriend, we just actually did some pottery classes because we were just itching to get out. So I can't imagine. I'd love to do a leatherwork class. So I would be definitely interested in doing something like that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who were like me, who maybe their grandpa did a little leatherworking when they were a kid with them, or their dad was a leatherworker when he was a kid or something, and they want to just come and experience a little bit of leatherworking, learn a little bit, and make something they can take home that'll last them for decades.
Yeah, that's
No,
awesome.
definitely. That's real cool. So, I personally don't know a whole lot about leather. So what are some key things that you look for, to kind of know the quality of certain leathers versus others, and just the overall condition of leather?
It's really tough. I've done a few different videos on how to judge leather, and I always struggle with them because there's so much information on how to judge them, and certain things you can look for it and judge it, but it's not always a true judgment of quality. But maybe the top three things I look for when I'm judging leather. The first one is I look for a grain pattern, and if you have no idea what a grain pattern is, leather, as I'm assuming everyone knows, is just literally just the skin of a cow or whatever animal it is. Right. And the top portion where the hair grows out is that smooth, tightly packed top layer of skin. And as you go down the cross section of the leather, as it gets closer to like the muscle of the cow, it gets a little bit more loose, it gets a little bit more pliable, and the fibers of the hide are more open and loose, and it gets a little bit weaker. And so that top portion, which is the very top layer of the skin minus the hair and everything on the very top layer, is the strongest portion. So if you're looking at a cross section of leather and it has that grain pattern, that's what is that's a really good indicator of quality, because that's the most sought after part of the hide. It's the strongest part of the hide, and it's the most beautiful. It's where you get that leather look, where you get the little dimples from the pores of the hide, and that smooth leather texture, versus like the underside is the suede side that is like the loose fibers. So that's the first thing I always look for. The second thing I look for is probably just the overall feel of it. Anytime I feel a leather product, I don't like to feel any foaminess in the leather. I don't want it to be really squishy and dry. I want it to feel dense and I don't want it to feel the separation of the top layer from the bottom layer, kind of like you feel in some cheaper leathers. And maybe the third one, I don't know if I can remember the third one now that I've talked so long. Let's see. Well, there's at least two of them. Those are probably the top two things I look for.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so interesting about the patterns and the cross patterns.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that so
I didn't know it was that deep. There's so much. I mean, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. But for you personally, what is the go-to brand for a nice quality leather shoe but without breaking the bank?
For a shoe?
Yeah, like either a shoe or boots or
leather boot. Yeah, because I know the ones that you were talking about. The nice, I think you said, was around like $500 something bucks or something like that. I was like, whew.
Yeah. For an all-out boot that has no sacrifices, you're spending $500. For a boot around the $200 to $300 price range, which is still super expensive for a boot. Right. Red Wings seems to be kind of the industry standard for a high-quality boot. And anything underneath that, you get some brands like Doc Martens who charge a lot that aren't that great. Timberland's kind of in that same world where they charge a fair amount, but the quality's not super great. Anything that's handmade and not like, how do I put this? Basically, anything it's not mass manufactured in China is going to be a good bet for quality.
Right.
It's so hard too, because some brands have a really high quality 2 or 3 boots, and then they sell tons of products underneath of that that's a lower price that are like subpar in quality. But I would say if I was to choose one mid-grade, semi-affordable boot that's going to last a long time, I usually point people towards Red Wing.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
It's good
Cool.
to know.
So we're kind of winding down towards the end of this podcast now, but so we'll take a step away from the business side. So whenever you aren't working, what are some things that you just like to do in your free time?
Well,
if you get free time.
Well, you mentioned camping.
That's
Right,
the problem.
right.
Yeah.
I started this business in college, and in college I did a lot of rock climbing.
Cool.
I did a lot of outdoor stuff like camping and that kind of stuff. But since then, I focus so much on my business, I don't get a lot of time for that. But I'd say probably the thing that I do to try to unwind and step away from the business, aside from just like hanging out with friends and stuff, is I like to work on mechanicking projects. I got a couple old Triumphs from the 60s that I've been restoring. And then I've got an old Volkswagen Rabbit pickup that I restore. And so that's probably my go-to hobby outside of tearing boots apart and working with leather is mechanicking.
Even the hobbies work, man. This guy's all all work.
Always working with his
Respect
hands.
it. I respect the grind.
So for our final question, if you could choose, who should we have on next for our podcast?
Huh.
And
well,
this can be anyone that's helped you along the way, or anyone that you would want to hear from, or just anything along those lines.
In the shoe world, in the footwear world,
Typically related to shoes,
Right.
yeah.
Or boots? Yeah.
The guys up at Nick's are some pretty solid dudes. When I cut boots apart, I'm like half guessing and half semi-informed and hoping that I'm not catastrophically wrong on anything.
All right.
And the guys at Nick's Handmade Boots, they are the most knowledgeable people on every aspect of footwear, and especially in the boot world.
Mm-hmm.
There's some solid dudes that know a lot of information. And if you're trying to stay away from boots, the guys at Koyo or Oliver Cabell, Scott at Oliver Cabell, they make like a minimalist white sneaker that's kind of modeled after the Common Project. That guy is pretty knowledgeable on a lot of things. So I'd say probably one of those two, either Nick's Handmade Boots or Oliver Cabell's shoes.
Well, we'll definitely have to reach out.
Yeah, definitely, man. And we appreciate your time. And that's going to actually wrap up this episode. If you like this episode, please feel free to support us by liking, following, or subscribing to whichever platform that you're listening to. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace.